right. Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. I want to introduce our distinguished guests here. So first of all, Trent England here to my right. Trent is the founder and executive director of Save Our States, and he's the co-chairman of the Stop Ranked Choice Voting Coalition.
Hey.
If you want to stop ranked choice voting, Trent is the guy to talk to. Thank you so much for coming to Maine.
Yeah.
Of course, many of you know Jason standing next to him. Jason Savage, of course, is our executive director of the Maine Republican Party, who is born and raised in Maine, and he's worked on elections and trained political operatives across the nation. Welcome, Jason and Trent. Let's set the stage. How many states have ranked choice voting? Does anyone know how many states have ranked choice voting? 2. You guys are an educated crowd. Yeah, there are exactly 2 states that have ranked choice voting at this point. There are others that might have it at the municipal level, but by and large, folks have common sense, and it's Maine and Alaska. And Alaska is in the process of repealing ranked choice voting. They are going to be voting on it this year. And so I want to make sure we're clear. Lead Maine opposes ranked choice voting. We do not support it. We would like to see it repealed in Maine. However, that's not the debate for tonight. Tonight, we want to be sure that we are practical, that we cover the nuts and bolts, and that when you leave here tonight, that you have your questions answered as far as if you decide to rank your vote in this gubernatorial election, where we have 7 candidates running, 8 that are actually on the ballot, that you know how is best for you to vote, whether that is ranking or not, and that you feel confident in that. So, question, how many of you have ranked previously in an election? Anybody? Okay, so a fair number. But pretty sure none of you have ranked 8 candidates, up to 8 candidates before, am I right?
Right.
All right. So ranked choice, should you decide to utilize it, is very much in play for this election. So we want to make sure that you leave here tonight knowing what that means for your vote and how you personally can best make your voice heard in the polling booth. So Trent is going to lead us off talking about what ranked choice voting is, kind of those nuts and bolts, and then we'll dive into specifics regarding this upcoming election.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laurel. It's great to be here. It's always wonderful to be up in Maine and talking about something that's so important, because I work on this because if we don't get elections right, we're unlikely to get anything else right. We know this. This is the basis of our republic, is voting and election integrity. And when I first came across ranked choice voting, my initial reaction was, wow, this is going to make elections a lot more complicated. It's going to make it easier for we, the voters, to make mistakes, easier for the people running elections to make mistakes, and make the whole process just harder and slower. And you all have been living through that in Maine. So I think you'll hear this a lot throughout the program. But as we talk about how to use ranked choice voting, obviously, co-chairing the Stop Ranked Choice Voting Coalition, I'm against it. I hope that you repeal it. But we always have to accept the world as it is. We have to figure out, we owe it to our ideas to figure out how to win, given the rules at the present time, even if we want to change those rules. So what is ranked choice voting? I was fascinated when I started digging into it, that it's actually not a new idea. I thought maybe some, harebrained academics cooked this up in the 90s or something. But no, this goes back to Victorian England. Right? This is an old idea and it seems new because it's been discredited and rejected so many times. Yeah, like socialism. That's exactly right. The real ranked choice voting has never been tried.
We will do it better.
That's right. So they started pushing this in Victorian England. It didn't catch on. Only a couple places in the world ever actually started using this. But we have seen folks predominantly on the political left in the U.S. They pushed it back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Here, some cities tried it. They all got rid of it. And then in the 90s and up to today, there's been this new push for ranked choice voting, this old tired, discredited idea. And of course, the concept is, well, voters should not just pick a candidate, voters should rank a candidate. And ballots shouldn't just be about voting for individual candidates. Ballots should be a worksheet where you're going through and you're ranking all of these candidates. And we will then run all this through an algorithm that we're going to talk about here tonight to claim that someone has majority support. And I know a little later in the program you're going to see a concrete example of how none of those claims have turned out to be true. But when you go to vote with ranked choice voting, you're ranking candidates, right? You're numerically ranking candidates. If there's 8, you're going to be given the opportunity to rank 1 through 8. Of course, you don't have to rank all of those candidates. Your first ranking is what's going to be counted in the first round and possibly in every round. Because if the candidate you rank first winds up being one of the 2 most popular candidates according to ranked choice voting, then your vote for that candidate will count the same way in every round. But if you vote for an unpopular candidate, in the first round of counting ranked choice voting ballots, if no candidate has over 50%, the least popular candidate gets eliminated. And then they run it through another round of counting. So how do they do that? What changes between round 1 and round 2? Well, those ballots where a candidate has been eliminated, if there's a second choice on those ballots, then the second choice gets moved up, counted as the first choice, and they count those ballots again. And what inevitably happens is some people just rank a single candidate, and those ballots are quote unquote exhausted and set aside for that election. And they do this over and over and over and over again until there's a candidate who has, with a combination of real first place rankings, adjusted up to first place rankings, and all those ballots that are set aside, thrown away, disappear, they're exhausted, until someone has a supposed majority in the election, right? That's the basic concept for ranked choice voting. And I guess I'll just conclude all that with this. One thing we should never let people do when they're talking about ranked choice voting is get away with claiming that it guarantees a majority winner. You hear this bumper sticker slogan all the time. It falsifies a majority winner, right? Because it's not the same. If I vote, if I give somebody my first place vote, you give them your fourth place vote, right? Those don't mean the same thing. And again, as you'll see in one of the examples later on, typically when ranked choice voting elections go through multiple rounds of tabulation, the ultimate winner does not have majority support if you include the ballots that were set aside, right? They have to throw away ballots in order to claim that somebody had majority support. That's not even democratic. So.
And I mean, Jared Golden stands as the example, right? Because Jason, I think you can illustrate for us how you get to a majority without getting to the majority.
The whole thing's fake. I mean, if 100,000 people vote, and then in round 2 or 3 they exhaust 20,000 of those ballots, and you get 41,000 votes, you're declared the winner with 41,000 votes. But is 41,000 votes a majority of 100,000 ballots cast? No, it's very simple. So they just keep lowering the bar to reach a majority, and they do this fake majority thing because it makes them feel good. It's really what it's about, is making them feel good, I think.
Absolutely. Now, one of the questions that we've heard a lot this year is, isn't ranked choice voting unconstitutional? And so we're going to touch on that real quick so you guys understand when ranked choice voting will be used this year. This year, the legislature tried to expand ranked choice voting. They advanced a bill that would make ranked choice voting used in the general election for governor and for the state house and the state senate. And previously and currently, ranked choice voting is applied in the primary for state and federal elections, and in the general only for federal elections, because that is what the Maine Constitution allows. So the Augusta Democrats wanted to expand it so that it would include the state elections in the general election. Maine Supreme Court affirmed their opinion from 2017 that said that that is unconstitutional. According to the Maine Constitution, you cannot expand ranked choice voting in Maine to include the general election for governor, for state House and for state Senate. And so this year, as in our previous years with ranked choice voting, you will see ranked choice on the ballot in the primary for state and federal elections and in the general for federal elections. Jason is going to walk us through some mock ballots here. We'll let those roll.
I'm going to go through these and just touch on each one and give an explanation. There's a question and answer at the end, so if we have questions, we'll do those at the end just to help us keep moving through. So this slide demonstrates a very common approach that Republicans like to take. It's just vote for that one person straight across. And the theory here, and this is a good ballot, this will be counted. This ballot will count for that same person based on rank number 1 until they're eliminated or they win. But the additional rankings, they don't really do anything in the calculations. Here's the theory why people want you to do this. Because they worry that if something happens and the ballot is damaged, or there's a question in a recount or a tabulation about voter intent, they want to make sure you're establishing voter intent to vote for their candidate. Also, the way the machines work, if it misses choice number 1, it will read choice number 2. Now that won't really matter that much unless you end up in a recount situation where they would discover that and correct it anyway. But this is the way that why these campaigns are advising you to vote like that, is because they want to establish voter intent and they want to make sure they get the vote on round 2 if the machine doesn't pick up round 1. But that is a good ballot. This one here, this accomplishes the same thing as the previous vote straight across. As long as your candidate is in the running, not eliminated, that rank number 1, that first round, will stay with them. It's like stuck to them, and it stays right there all the way through until they are eliminated, and then the ballot is counted as exhausted.
And in case anybody can't see this one or the previous slide, the first slide was voting for the same candidate all the way across in every bubble, not ranking, but simply voting for one candidate all the way across. This is voting for one candidate one time, and that's it.
They accomplish the same thing. This is a traditional ranking. It does not rank all of the candidates. It ranks candidate number 5 in the first round, candidate number 2 in the second round, candidate number 1 in the third round, and candidate number 6 in the fourth round. And so this one on round 1 will be counted as a vote for candidate 5. If, let's just say, candidate 5 is eliminated, then in round number 2, when that goes through the process, then you're going to be, that person will be voting for candidate number 2. And then as their candidates are eliminated, because one thing that happens with this often is the people who rank the lowest first, they usually continue that pattern of voting for the less popular candidates for some reason. But if it continues in that same pattern, then round number 3 will be, their vote will go to candidate 1, and then round number 4, their vote will go to candidate 6. This is a totally legitimate ballot that will count through 4 rounds, pretty much no matter how you do it, because if their first choice is still in the running, that vote stays with them, and if it gets eliminated, it starts into the count or the cascade of the others. Note that you do not have to vote for all the candidates. You can rank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in this case 7, 8. Well, 7 really. I wouldn't advise you to vote for the guy that dropped out, but that will count, and that will hold at least until all of those candidates are eliminated. This one is somebody got creative here, so. Some people, and this is kind of a thing that we should stop and discuss for a minute. A lot of people try to come up with creative ways to game the system, or to beat the system, or to find some magic in ranked choice voting to give their ballot an advantage. But what this one here will do is it will count the vote for candidate number 1 in the first round, and then in the second round, and then in the third round.
But not 3 times.
But not 3 times. It will just stick there. If candidate 1 gets eliminated, then it will start to go to, trying to look at it from the side here. Candidate 6, it will start to pick that up, and it will move through the process that way. This is a big no-no.
Don't do this. Don't do this.
And I'll tell you what happens sometimes. This happens perfectly innocently. because people have had a long day at work. They dragged one of the kids into the voting booth, and they're just trying to, like, get through. You know, little Johnny is tugging at their pants, and they voted. Some of the ballots are just a normal, you know, bullet vote, and then they get to this, and they start, and next thing you know, they've done this. If you vote for more than one person per round, that ballot is going to be voided. It's not going to get counted in the first round. The machine or the warden or the person doing a recount, nobody will be able to tell with this who you intended to vote for. So that's getting thrown out, just gone. You can actually, if you do that, you can take that to the clerk that's working at the election, the polling place, and get a replacement ballot. And you know, if you're out there talking to people and they're worried that they're going to mess it up, say, well, if you mess it up, just go to the clerk and get a replacement. And you know, then we'll call around after the election to find out how many they have, how many thousands of them they have, because they do. I can't see it. Yeah, all right, so here's an interesting one. And I've actually had this happen where somebody says, I'm going to skip spots and then I'm going to vote for the people I like the least last. There's no subtraction in ranked choice voting, so you can't vote to subtract people by giving them low rankings. The math doesn't work that way. The key here, the mechanics of this are if you skip 2 rankings on a ballot, the machine will automatically kick that ballot out. It doesn't count that as that.
So if you skip one,
if
you accidentally skip one, you're good.
You're good, but if you skip 2, the ballot is tossed. So if you're going to only skip 1, probably not going to help you to do that. But definitely don't skip 2 because that ballot's going to get voided if you do.
And to clarify, will rank 1 and rank 2 count at all, or is the entire, okay.
Rank 1 and rank 2 will still count. But at that point, when it's doing the retabulation for ranked choice voting, it's going to read it as if the only thing you voted was 1 and 2, and then everything else is going to read it as blank. Because once the machine goes through 2 consecutive rounds of not voting, it just jumps to this ballot is over.
So don't get fancy with the strategy.
Don't get fancy. There's no subtraction in ranked choice voting, and all you're going to do is get your ballot thrown out. I think that was it.
All right, that was it on that section. So how should I rank? We've run through these examples and there are so many options, right? We've seen just a few of these examples. We were talking previous to this, myself and Trent and Jason, about there are so many options. We kept talking through scenarios. There are endless scenarios of how you might vote. And I think that's why there are so many folks asking all of us questions about ranked choice voting for this election. And so let's talk through some of these scenarios. You know, we've heard questions like, if I have one candidate that I really like, does ranking help or hurt my candidate? Does it make my voice more heard or less heard? Is there a clear answer on that? So let's talk through some of these examples that we've had questions submitted for. Jason, do you want to lead off with that one, and then we'll jump over to Trent?
Yeah, I guess the first question is, if I have a clear first choice, does ranking more candidates hurt me? No, it doesn't hurt you. You can make that choice. A lot of this is going to come down to your level of confidence in what that vote is for and how much you dislike the other candidates. I would never tell you morally to vote for somebody that you don't agree with enough that you wouldn't want to vote for them. So please don't compromise yourself to do that. But if you're looking at a scenario where you have a clear favorite, but there are 3 other people you kind of like, it doesn't hurt you to rank. It may actually give you an option later on if you know there's a surprise where your favorite gets booted out, and you know maybe out of those 8 there are 3 you really like and 3 you really don't like. If your first choice gets, sound like I'm doing a promo for ranked choice voting here.
Disclaimer, let's do like a middle of the road.
I'm just gonna go
disclaimer.
Yes or no.
We don't like ranked choice voting, but we want you empowered.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to give yourself some options, and there are some people in the field that you really like and some people that you really don't, you can think of some of those second or third choices as an insurance policy to give you another shot at it.
Well, I think it's important to think about what's lost in the process, because this is, the ranked choice voting advocates say, oh, this is great. You get to have second, third, whatever choices. In Oklahoma and a lot of states, we're going to have a primary a week after you all will have yours, and we'll have a runoff. we don't use ranked choice voting, and the people who push ranked choice voting call it an instant runoff. But what you lose is in Oklahoma, we'll all know who we're voting for in that runoff. They'll have debates, right? We'll have a discussion within Republican circles, and sometimes there are Democrats running for state offices in Oklahoma, and they'll have discussions too.
He's telling the truth. There aren't any.
They have a hard time finding.
They got different politics going on down there in Oklahoma.
He's right. I think the tornadoes just swept them all away. But so that's what's lost. So I think you do, right? If you have preferences among these candidates, right, you do want to use this system. But we can also accept that we're really losing something, right? Because you don't know in this process who's going to be eliminated. You're casting votes without knowing who those votes are actually going to be counted for in the end. That's very strange, right? But still, these are the rules that you're given. And, I know for me, I always want to get the most conservative nominee who I think can win, right? And so I'm always thinking that when I go and vote. And, in a crowded primary, there's going to be some different people I have preferences about. And if you rank 2 and they get eliminated, then in this case, if the other 5 you just don't care among them, then you're losing nothing. But if you do have a third choice, right, or if you do have somebody you really don't like, right, well, maybe you want to rank 6 and leave that one off, as a sort of a moral statement.
I guess that's speaking to kind of the strategy of it, right? I think folks want to understand the nuts and bolts, but there is some strategy. Don't get fancy. Don't skip 2 spaces, but you can think about the strategy a little bit. And we are cognizant. We're not going to discuss specific candidates, but we are aware there's lots of discussions going on across Maine about the strategy. So as you think over questions for Q&A at the end, feel free to ask those strategy questions. But I think, Jason, you had a note on that as well.
Well, I actually like to go back and just say, for everybody here in this room, this is really to the point of why this is so important. I've been doing this with ranked choice voting since it was put into effect in Maine. I will tell you unequivocally, and hopefully this doesn't get me in trouble, the left sees this as a voter suppression advantage over you. Although they can't explain it to their people, have you seen the M&M video they're trying to? Yeah. So they still can't really explain it, but their people will march into any government operation and take part because they just have faith in their government. The point here is that what Laurel and what Lead Maine is doing is breaking the barrier, tearing apart the veil, and saying, here's how it really works. And you can now go out there and advocate to people that you were here, you learned about it. It is not some evil thing hiding in the box to flip the votes or change the election. You're learning how to use it. And when you're educated and you can explain that to people, we're taking away their ability to suppress our vote. And that's the most important part of this.
Absolutely, because we want to make sure that your voice is heard and that you are confident in speaking up. And that certainly includes in voting. And so thank you for that, Jason. We do want you guys to leave here tonight not just confident in your vote, but confident in talking to your friends, your family, and your neighbors, and encouraging them to vote and make their voice heard as well. Now, I'm sitting here going, okay, there are, I'm thinking I'm probably going to be maybe in that few boat. I may rank some, but not all. What happens if I rank 1 versus 7? We've talked about that a little bit, but can we kind of dive right into that?
Well, if you rank 1, you really do take the risk that if that candidate's eliminated, you just have no voice in that election.
In the runoff, that's immediate.
Yeah,
and not
after if that candidate, if you rank candidate A, and candidate A in the 4th round is eliminated, then at that point your ballot's set aside. You're taken out not just of the numerator but the denominator, of the whole process. And so, I think that the real question is, do you have opinions about the other candidates, right? Because as we've already pointed out, it doesn't help candidate A anymore to vote only for candidate A and not for any of the others than it does if you rank.
Super rank.
That's right. You can't super rank. You can't rank somebody twice There are other kinds of voting systems that people push where you can do all these kinds of crazy things. But ranked choice voting is crazy other ways. So that's right. I mean, if, you can't hurt your top choice by ranking other candidates.
I think what the stakes feel really high. There are so many candidates. I had a phone call from somebody today asking me about candidates themselves. I'm not endorsing, Lead Maine is not endorsing, so it was a limited conversation and encouraging folks to do some research. But I'm sure I'm not the only one that has been in the position of being in the voting booth and going like, shoot, I didn't Google so-and-so. And you're doing it in the voting booth. How many of us have done that? Anybody else, please? Thank you. Okay. There are a lot of candidates. What if I don't know anything about candidates? I walk into the voting booth and there's all these candidates to rank and I don't know anything about them. I guess that goes back to the scenario where you rank some and maybe not others.
If it's a general election, I'm going to say just make sure you rank the one with the R after their names. I know you're not going to say that, but like the nonprofit thing. But I mean, you don't have to rank everybody, and it's not going to hurt the people you vote for not to rank some of them. Just don't skip 2 spots there. I would say that you should never, in my opinion, you should never morally vote for somebody that you are not comfortable voting for, right? That's gonna be in your mind forever if they turn out to be a terrible person. So, and that happens. We know that happens. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of bumbling here, but I think you should just vote the people that you do the research on. But more importantly, if you're taking things that serious that you're either here in this room or you're watching online, do a little bit more homework on people and take a few minutes to go read about them, and you can make an informed decision. And if it's a smaller election, you can reach out to your local political party or people that you know and trust that are involved, and they'll give you some information about those people. So I think the biggest thing would be everybody should be more involved in the process itself, so that you know about them and you can hold them accountable for what they do when they're in office.
And one other thing I would point out is Maine has early voting. And so as of right now, voting has already opened across the state. Folks can request an absentee ballot through the mail. So you can request that online. You can go into your town hall and you can literally pick up your ballot and vote in person right then and there. Take it with you, take it home. If you're not sure about some of those names on there and you need to do a little more research, you are welcome to do that. And so in this context, I think that could be helpful for some folks who are going, I'm not sure, I need a little more time, I need to do some research, I don't know who a couple of these candidates were, I thought I knew them all, but now I'm a little blindsided. Early voting gives you that ability to take the time, do the research, whether it is through requesting your ballot online and doing it fully absentee, or going to your town hall and picking it up there and voting in person. You have options. And so that can help you have the time you need to do the research and make sure you know who the candidates are that you want to support, candidate is, or candidates are that you want to support on your ranked choice ballot. And I think that can help give some confidence there. We are going to, do you guys have anything else to add on this front before we go into a kind of real world example? Okay. So we wanted to make sure that you guys have the ability to see an example here. And so thank you to Nick Murray, our policy and comms director. He and his friend Claude worked up this example here. And Jason is going to do his best to explain what we got going on here. We will take a moment and kind of go through the diagram at different points, because you're going to be able to see how votes in the different rounds switch and move to different candidates, and then who is the eventual victor at the end. I won't give you any spoilers, but don't make any assumptions here, folks.
Here we have the graphic scrolling to show you all the candidates. I'm going to start this this is going to look very complicated. This is what's happening in the box. It's not what's happening with your ballot. This is how many total ballots are in this?
100,000 total in this sample.
100,000 ballots in this example. So you can see here round one shows candidate A got 28,000, candidate B got 25,000, and it goes down to candidate G who got 4,000, 4% out of 100,000 votes.
And while we're here, I'm just going to point out, okay, so in Oklahoma, Trent, if we were in Oklahoma and we had candidate A who got 28% and candidate B who got 25%, what does that look like then?
Yeah, so we would then, and these things happen in a lot of our Republican primaries. We would go to a runoff, and I think it's 6 weeks later, we would have a campaign, candidate A, candidate B, they would make their case. So all the people who voted for other candidates, we would have an informed electorate who would go to the polls and choose between those two.
And so A and B, there would be a runoff. So 6 weeks later in Oklahoma, and those 100,000 folks who had voted would go back to the polling booth, and they would get to vote for A or B. But we are in Maine. We have 7 candidates on the gubernatorial ballot, and we're doing ranked choice voting. So let's go ahead and go to round 2, because neither candidate A nor candidate B got 50% plus 1, right? Are we all agreed? Nobody got 50%? Okay, so we're doing round 2.
Here in round 2, you can see that candidate A picked up some votes, not a whole lot. It looks like about 1,400 votes that have flowed from some of the other candidates. And if you look, you'll see these sort of like little tentacles. Those represent the flow of the votes coming from the candidates who were batch eliminated, right? So the bottom 3, E, F, and G down here, because none of them were mathematically capable of continuing on if they picked up all of the remaining votes from one of the others. They're all eliminated together, batch elimination, and then their votes are reallocated to the candidates that remain. And you'll see these little tentacles that kind of go up and flow into them. So at the end of round 2, candidate A has 29,400, but candidate B has 30,800 because candidate B picked up a bunch of votes from the people who were eliminated. Candidate C has 18,100 or 18.7%. D has 18.9%. And then there are 3,400 ballots that are exhausted.
Okay, so those exhausted ballots could be if folks that voted for E, F, and G, if they voted for E, F, and G across, all the way across, or only once, if they voted for E, F, and G only once, then those ballots are some of those exhausted ballots. And those, obviously, no other votes shift to other candidates.
And now those exhausted ballots reduce the overall total that you have to count against to get a majority. So instead of needing a majority of 100,000 votes, you now need 96,600 votes, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
majority of 96,600, yes.
Okay, so what happens next?
All right, everybody good on this round? All right, round 3.
So, candidate C.
Isn't this fun?
So, who's out? Who's out now?
So who's out is F, E, F, and G are all out. We've got A, B,
Right,
C, and D that are still in the running.
Right, so
So
it drops
how
out
did-
of round 2.
I've got a question.
Yes.
How did the votes get exhausted that you just said 4,400
Because-
exhausted?
Those bottom 3, so candidate E, candidate F, and candidate G, they're done. They're out of the running. And so the folks who voted straight across only for their E, F, or G candidate, or they voted simply one time, it counts the same. It only counts for that E, F, or G candidate. They didn't rank. And so those ballots are exhausted and there's nothing to rank.
So here,
Correct.
C is the lowest. C.
So C is the lowest. Okay, so at this point, candidate A has 30.4%, candidate B has 31.9%. They're in first place at this point. Candidate C has just 18.7, and candidate D has 18.9, so it's actually slightly ahead of candidate C.
So candidates have leapfrogged each
Yes.
other there. Candidate B caught candidate A, went past them, and candidate D passed candidate C, which means candidate C, this one here, is getting eliminated. And so now candidate C's ballots are being retabulated based on the additional rankings on candidate C's ballots, and those are being moved to the remaining candidates, which are candidate A, B, and D.
So candidate C, with this third round, candidate C is the one that's booted out. Candidate C had the least for that ranking. So their third choice, their second choice. See, I gotta confirm with the experts here. Their second choice is now applied. Candidate C's second choice is now applied to candidate A, candidate B, and candidate D. So now we have candidate A at 33.5%, candidate B at 39.1%, and candidate D at 27.4%.
And is the exhausted total that's listed there the cumulative total?
Yes.
Okay. So now 7,400 ballots total have been exhausted, which means that the total ballots remaining is 92,600. So a candidate now needs to have 50% plus one of 92,600, not the original 100,000.
And can everybody see, if, as much as you can see, you'll see on the video later too, see how these, the second choice is flowing to these other, some are exhausted, some are flowing to candidate D, some are flowing to B, and some are flowing to A for this round. All right. So that's round
Candidate
three.
A really didn't do a whole lot to get anybody to like them besides the people who voted for them the first time.
That's true. Not picking up that many votes in the second and third round.
Okay, final round.
All right, final round. Hey, before you do it, all right. Who thinks that candidate A is going to win in the final round? Show of hands.
I just.
I see that you're going to comment about
Well,
that
okay.
today.
All right. I mean, they're not doing great at this point. Jason's right. But you never know what will happen in this last round. So candidate A, anybody? No optimists here. All right, candidate B. Who thinks that candidate B is going to pull it out? All right, I'm seeing a few hands. Who thinks that candidate D is the winner? All right. We have a lot of people who didn't vote. Ironically. Let's not have that in June or November of this year, please. All right. So let's see. Drum roll, please. Anybody?
Go ahead.
All right. Candidate B has swung up into the lead. They have 46,000 total votes, which is 55% of the remaining ballots. But remember, there are exhausted ballots down here, 17,000 exhausted ballots, in fact. And so they can't get this is not a truly 55%. This is actually 46% of the original 100,000. They never got to a majority of the original 100,000. This is a fake majority. Then you have candidate D. Look at this. Candidate D swung right up and ate a bunch of candidate A votes. And so they're at that 44% of the remaining ballots, of the ones that are still in existence and not exhausted. And so here we see candidate B has won in this artificial runoff system. Any thoughts on that, guys?
Well, it's interesting. Well, two thoughts. One is I've seen some confused faces.
Yes.
That's why we're against ranked choice voting, right? It's not a problem with you. It's a problem with RCV.
Yes.
But it's so strange to think about if someone voted for candidate G, their ballot might have been counted for G and then for another candidate and another candidate and another candidate and another candidate, right? If somebody voted for candidate C, then their vote was counted for, or candidate D. They may have had D and then A and then E and then whatever, but they were counted for D in every step, right? Nobody knows how that's going to work out ahead of time. I mean, you can try to look at the polls, right? But nobody knows the polls better than Jason, and he's not going to know, right, how all that's going to flow through the ballot. You're casting a vote without having all of that information, which is part of why you can't really game the system. It's part of why we oppose the system, but it is, I think, in my opinion, why to the extent that you have opinions about these candidates, you do want to rank them, because if you wind up voting for candidate E or F or G, if you just rank that candidate, nobody else, you're not counted in any of the rest of that.
Now, I'll push back on that a little bit, because I think maybe some folks are okay with that. Going, I really feel strongly about this one candidate. I only want to vote for this one candidate. And now that I'm fully informed on how ranked choice voting works, I'm okay with that. Like, I know now my ballot will be exhausted at some point if my candidate of choice doesn't win, but I feel so strongly about that one candidate that I am okay with that within this terrible system that we have. And so, are there questions? I want to stick on this for a few minutes. We'll go into general Q&A because we want to hear from you guys. But are there questions about this and the practical application on seeing it? Yes, we have a question over here.
I'm not understanding when you say E, F, and G's votes get accounted to other people. Is that the second choice they pick gets accounted? I'm not getting it.
Sure, go for it, Jason.
E, F, and G are eliminated after the first round.
Okay.
So those voters who voted for candidates E, F, and G, if they made a second choice on their ballot, then that second choice gets moved up to those other candidates
In the second round.
in the second round. If they didn't choose anybody else, if they just bullet voted that one circle, or if they voted straight across for that one candidate, then it gets moved into the exhausted, because the system can't determine any other choice that that voter made other than that one.
So hypothetically, if you vote for A, and then you vote for B, and then you skip, and you go back to A, what happens?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it kind of illustrates the issues with ranked choice voting. For me to answer your question, you have to tell me whether candidate A is still in the ballot or not. Are they still eligible? If you vote for candidate A and then you go to B and then you skip, and then in round 4 you add A again, and candidate A is still eligible to win, then your first round for candidate A is still there. So you'll never get to the fourth round choice. The only time anything else on that ballot matters is if the candidate you picked in the first round is eliminated.
I think we have a question over here, and then we have another one over here. So I see you.
So if someone votes and they vote in every dot, if you get to the third round and the person they voted for is no longer in running, what happens?
If they voted for the same person in every round?
No, if they voted for a different person, they actually get a full ranking. If you get to like the third round and they vote into someone who's already been taken out, what would be about?
Okay, so your question is, let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. Look, it's so complicated. Okay, you're saying, so if somebody voted for candidate A first, and they're in for a couple rounds, A is in for a couple rounds, but then they are out, correct? Your candidate is out. And so you put in second place, you ranked B. If B is then out, what happens? B is already out.
It just, so you could think about it as if on every candidate who's been eliminated is just sort of crossed off your ballot. Think of it that way. And then in that next round, your highest ranking, whatever that highest ranking is going to be
still in the running.
That's not eliminated, will be counted as if it's your first place vote. So that's a great question. So if you rank them just right down the line, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and and A is in as B is eliminated and C is eliminated and D is eliminated, and then finally in that fifth round, A is eliminated. Well, then your vote for E would be counted in that round.
Can I ask a question about your question? No, I
We want to keep it complicated.
think the question is coming from a logical place of,
Yeah.
does the round I vote in align with the round of voting that they're tabulating in? Is that correct? No? I totally misread that? It sounded like you were kind of wondering if additional rounds of voting were going to get counted if a couple of your choices were eliminated. No? No.
Can we answer to that question? Yes, let's come back to that question because I think
That's
some
my
people.
second question. Yeah,
Thanks,
so
Jason.
yeah,
then you
I kind of thought that might be something here. So, if you have had somebody that's on the ballot and then you know they get eliminated and it kind of goes through, what Trent was saying is it's essentially as if all the other names are crossed off the ballot and your next viable choice that isn't eliminated gets moved in and counted that way. Which is, I guess maybe I just thought I could explain it simpler, but it didn't really work out well.
Again, if you think it's complicated, it's not you, right? It's this ranked choice voting system. It's just inherently complicated, which is why in other places we've seen election officials make mistakes, voters make mistakes that have caused elections to be, have to be recounted and recertified.
I mean, it is going to be interesting after the primary watching what happens in the Secretary of State's office because this is not going to be a results known on election night. It would be interesting, Jason, to hear your predictions on that, on how long it takes to sort out who's actually won the primary. But let me come over to Kelly's question. Go ahead.
What's eliminating to me is that you're saying that each time the exhaustion night happens, the percentage of how much they have or get changes as well.
Yeah.
And when we get to that end, do we get to know what the percentage of is at the end, or is that kept from the public? Like how?
So the percentage stays the same. The total, the total reduces by the exhausted ballots, and at the end, when they publish the results, you will see the total number of remaining ballots, and then the vote total of the winner, and you'll see that it creates that dynamic of a fake majority.
Right. So that 100,000 is not really 100,000.
That's not the number that you end up with at the end because you have those exhausted ballots. So when they say that percentage, Nick, can you pull up round 4 here? So when they say, oh, look, candidate B is the winner with 55.6%, that's 55.6% of the active ballots. That does not include the exhausted ballots. So that's why we say, 46,000 votes. We're going with some simple math here. 100,000 ballots. So it means he's obviously achieved 46% of the original 100%. That's why we're saying it's a fake majority because this majority is simply out of the ballots that remain. It's not exhausted.
Rank every single one of them and still be exhausted out in the third round because people that you ranked toward the 6 are no longer running.
Right. If the candidates you ranked are no longer in the running and at a certain point your ballot gets exhausted, then yes, your ballot would then be exhausted. Let me make sure we haven't hit this side yet. Kaylee, can you keep track of who is next in line for questions?
Hi, I have a question. After you get to 51% and then it gets challenged, what is it that they're going to find?
Are you talking about challenge in a recount?
Yes. What is it that they're going to find once you get to that 51% and the candidate who lost is challenging that? What is it that you're going to find?
Well, usually in a recount, the type of challenges, so to set the stage for everybody, a recount is when all the ballots are manually counted by teams from both sides. And in a ranked choice voting recount, I've only really done one. There's a lot of challenges based on voter intent because a lot of people make they make marks on the ballot or they make a mistake and they try to change it or erase it or X it out. And so what really happens there is the challenging candidate and their legal team will sit there and they'll have their team counting and everything that looks odd, they're bringing it up and they're saying, challenge. They're trying to find things there that they can use to challenge voter intent. And voter intent is the most important thing in that process to determine how that ballot gets counted. So if you do a ranked choice ballot and you make a mistake, go get a new ballot. so that you don't leave doubts about what your intentions were with that. And that could be everything as simple as a mark in the wrong place, or, you know, trying to erase the circle or mark out a circle. Just get a clean ballot and do it nice and clean so that you make sure that your ballot is counted. And that really stands for every election. You know, you want to turn it into a clean, complete ballot.
No Xing anything out.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Kaylee, you decide who's, but I can't see all the hands in all the rooms, so we want to make sure we're fair. Hi, I thought I had a good handle on this. Now I'm lost again. So in that example, what I heard someone ask, and I think it made a new question for me. If I voted for candidate B in the first round, and personally, I'm just going to vote for that person straight across because I am happy with the traditional method of voting. But if I voted for candidate B, and then I voted for candidate B, and then I voted for candidate G, what happens in that example? You voted for B, and B is never out of the running. So my third choice doesn't matter. Your original B vote is what is counting. That's what sticks through the whole thing, because your candidate B, is there. So even though you ranked somebody else who is already out of the running, it doesn't matter because your candidate was in the whole time. Jason, Trent, I got that right?
That's right. And we were talking about it before the event started. You know, it means that people who like the least popular candidates wind up being the most influential in the later rounds. So you vote for one of the popular candidates, your vote just sticks through all those rounds because your candidate is not eliminated. If you vote for a candidate who is very unpopular, then your vote jumps around as your candidate, you know, or candidates are eliminated.
Sort of the people who vote for the weird, unpopular candidates they get to keep trying to get it right. And it just drives me nuts because I don't want those people anywhere near making decisions for my government, but in this system they get to.
It's a far cry from one person, one vote.
Sure is.
All right, who's next?
Thank you. We get down to the last two candidates and we count the votes and it's a tie. What happens?
A tie. Is it even
Yes, it does
possible?
happen.
Oh, we might have to have an actual runoff. Is this possible?
Well, I think that there is a way for that to happen, but so usually what will happen is they'll go back and count again. And if you look at a run of ballots long enough, and you let enough lawyers look for something, eventually somebody finds something, and usually the other side gets exhausted and they give up. But I've actually heard of a coin toss.
Yeah, I think Maine is a coin toss state. Oklahoma, I think, is a draw straws state. Yeah. No, somewhere in your state law, there's a provision for tied elections, which at the state level rarely happens, but when you get to small local elections, it certainly can happen.
Well, I mean, and that can happen at the state rep level, right? We had a candidate win their district by 1 vote, another one lost theirs by 7. That one was a recount. And for a few minutes there, I think we were all kind of going like, is this tied? What's going on here? So, it sounds far-fetched, but in Maine, your voice and your vote really does matter. It really does count because we have these elections, ranked choice or not, these elections, particularly for state house or local office, that come down to just a few votes. Here in across the river in Auburn, in my area, we had a candidate once win an election with 7 write-in votes, and that's it at the local level. So if you hear your neighbor or your friend saying, my voice doesn't count, I'm not going to bother voting, you correct them on that because these elections come down to very, very, very small numbers.
The people who show up have so much power, and we saw that in the last legislative elections. The majority of the Maine House was decided by a sum total of like 100 votes or less.
60 votes.
60 votes.
Across the
Three
entire
elections.
state.
60 people in 3 districts decided who was going to be the Speaker of the House. And I think a lot of people here will understand what life would have been like for Laurel if Ryan Fectow was not the Speaker of the House. 60 people could have made a difference to those 3. So that's why it's so important to get everybody to show up.
Absolutely. It's critical. All right, Kaylee's got the next question for us.
Yes. What is the threshold for kicking out those exhausted votes? What's the percentage that they need to not get above So they're thrown out and recounted in the ranking of the second round.
In that first round, it's a mathematical calculation that determines that those candidates are they've received so few votes that there's no mathematical way that they could ultimately win. So even if other candidates were eliminated, they lost no votes, and they were picking up votes from the other candidates who were eliminated, they could never get to 50% of the remaining ballots.
So in this scenario here, where we have candidate E, candidate F, and candidate G, who got really small numbers in that first round, even if, let's say G was eliminated and E and F stayed in, like, the math says even if the number 2 from every single one of G's came to just one of these candidates, and then let's say the next one eliminated, all of those next votes came to this one candidate again, they still could never get 50%. The math says it's absolutely impossible. And so they are out.
I have a
Next
quick question, and that is, I volunteered at 2 different elections. One was the last Trump election, and then the other one was a local election in 2 different towns. And the ranked choice voting was definitely the most confusing things in all towns. A more affluent town, were well-educated people, and a working blue-collar town. So you're right, it does need to be repealed. But my question is, if you go in and you're very passionate about a particular candidate, and you go right across the board and you vote for candidate A, and you feel confident that that person's going to win, and they are in every round of counts because they get that percentage, does every vote count? Because I was told by a town clerk that it didn't. After the first round, that your vote wouldn't count because you voted the same way across.
So the same.
So candidate A, right across
Candidate
your
A. In this scenario, let's say you voted for candidate. In this scenario, let's say you voted for candidate B. You voted all the way across. You filled out all of your bubbles for candidate B.
Yeah.
It counts the same as if you filled out just one bubble for candidate B, and that's it, and didn't rank anybody else. Your ballot counts exactly the same.
The slide of the votes right across.
So your vote does count in those sections.
Your first one. Do you want to expound on that?
Put the slide back up.
Yeah, because the only time that the machine is reading your second place vote is if you voted for somebody in the first place who was eliminated. So if you voted for the same person in the first and the second place, the machine just never gets to that second place vote if that candidate is never eliminated. It just keeps counting your first place vote again and again. And if you vote for the person with your first place and your second place and they're eliminated, well, you lose your first place and your second place at the same time. Yeah, I think this shows that.
This, and then the one that shows just the one vote, right? Then you're the same thing if that candidate is still in the running.
I just feel that it's a great statement for every conservative in this state to just go across the ballot, and it's a statement of friendship boy. But that's just my personal.
Yeah, I
It's
think
a way of saying, we're back at it.
I think you are absolutely not alone in that. That it has, I think, in the past been how many folks, myself included, have voted on a ranked choice ballot. I think the question that's coming into play here is that we have 7 candidates, and some folks are considering actually ranking instead of doing one across all the way. Some folks are considering ranking for the first time. And that is confusing. We've talked about all the reasons it's confusing. And so, we're not taking a stance on if and how people rank. Ranking, voting once for one candidate is the same as voting all the way across. You're right. That kind of dives into strategy, right? if you feel that makes a strong statement and that's how you want to vote and that's how you want your voice to be heard, and after hearing everything about ranked choice, you feel confident in that, then we have succeeded here tonight. And so if you go home and you vote and you only fill out one bubble on your ballot and you are, you feel convicted to do that and that's the right thing for you, bravo. We are glad that you feel confident in it now. And that's what we want at the end of the day, whether you rank or not at all. Vote. If you're eligible to vote, please vote. That should be the strongest message that we are giving here tonight. Vote one dot. Vote the same person all the way across. Rank 3 candidates. Rank 7 candidates. Vote however you'd like to within the system that exists and the laws that we have, and be confident in your vote and how you are speaking up and using your voice. That's what we want you to take home tonight. And the overarching vote is the message. Krista, I think we have time for 2 more questions and then we're going to close out. Krista and then this gentleman right here. Yes.
I was a registrar for a town here in Maine, and it was awful when the first ranked choice voting election happened. The amount of people that put their ballots through, even though it spit it out because they did it wrong, it says, accept as, and it would go through, and they'd come to me and say, I think I voted wrong. And I said, I can't help you, already put it through the machine. The problem is I don't think a lot of people know that when that ballot spits back out, they really can go to, a registrar, the clerk, and get a new ballot. I don't think a lot of people know that. And they're embarrassed. It's very, I had a lot of elderly say, I'm never going to vote again. It's too hard. And that was so heart-wrenching because these are people in my town that had voted in strong civil duties that day. It was very sad, but you know why? That we don't have more of a conversation that before people vote, no, if you make it wrong, you can get a new ballot. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to be education by the Secretary of State's office. But again, I think that's maybe the open got it.
That is not allowed to.
But again, if our people, it's a tragedy if any one person in Maine doesn't vote because of ranked choice voting. But I have a sense that our side is disproportionately affected by this. They don't want to do it. And it's costing everybody in the state, it's costing our kids or our grandkids. Because if we're sitting out or we're just saying it's too complicated, or that's costing everybody. So that's the point of this. Laurel wanted to do this is let's get educated on it. Let's make sure everybody knows and don't be intimidated by the system.
I have 2 questions.
And
You
know
only
what?
wanted one.
But hold that thought for just a second. I want to add on to that, Jason and Krista. It speaks to the importance of every person in this room and every person who eventually watches this online in having conversations with their friends, their family, their neighbors, and educating them on what you learn here tonight so that we can pass knowledge along and ensure that folks aren't too intimidated to vote. And that is, that now that we know, that is all of our responsibility. So go ahead with your 2 questions.
When we were sold the bill of goods for the ranked choice voting, we were told that it would save the state money. And we're right on. The question to that is, did it? And the other question I have has to do with, example, if I was voting for 5 different people in this, or ranking 5 different people, and my neighbor is ranking 5 different people, but we have different orders, does the order in which they're being ranked make a difference?
So I'll make a comment on the budget question, which is it's always hard to tell because there's the money that's allocated to elections isn't always tied to individual elections, and I doubt that the money spent at the Secretary of State's office has gone down. But I'm always fascinated by these people who come out and say, we should do ranked choice voting so we can spend maybe $1 million less on elections because they're always the same people who want to spend $500 million more on welfare. So, they seem to have a skewed idea of what, to me, elections are a core function of government, like public safety, right? And so I don't want to defund the police. I don't want to cut corners on elections. I'm okay spending what it takes to run elections well. But what we've seen is typically places aren't really saving substantial money, and oftentimes they're not saving any money with ranked choice voting. When New York started using it in New York City, they spent $15 million trying to educate voters how to use it.
Don't forget, we didn't have runoff.
Yeah.
So they were telling us we were saving money from a scenario that didn't exist.
Okay, yeah.
So we want to build a moon base, but we'll settle for this 40-bedroom mansion. Is kind of what we got. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. The other question on the order in which you rank, yes, it does matter because at your next place ranking is always going to be counted. So if you and your neighbor both ranked A first, but you ranked B second and he ranked C second, when A gets eliminated, then you're going to be voting for these different candidates who are competing against each other. So the order does matter. Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You guys have helped fill in the cracks for me for sure. I hope for you as well with ranked choice voting. Remember, the primary election day is June 9th. Voting has already opened as of this week. And so you can early vote. You can request your absentee ballot. Please make sure you get out and vote in the primary. The primary for governor will use ranked choice voting. The general for governor will not use ranked choice voting. That's in the Constitution. So whatever your view of the system is, and I know we have strong views on this system, we wanted to make sure that you have the confidence to vote the way that is best for you, whether you utilize ranking or not. We do want to point out that we have a resource on the website, leadmaine.com. That's just generally about ranked choice voting. And then this video is also going to be online and available as of next Wednesday. That is Wednesday the 20th, Nick, if my dates are right. All right, Wednesday the 20th. So be sure to tell your friends and family that this will be coming out. And we'll email it out next week. So please share that on social media via email and via text. We also would point out, if you are looking for resources on the governor's race, I do believe that there's a voter's guide that's published by the Christian Civic League. There are resources on the Secretary of State's website regarding ranked choice voting. You can utilize those as well. And we would just encourage you. There is, of course, voting is important, but there are other ways to get involved. If you haven't signed up to be a Lead Maine volunteer yet, please do so at leadmaine.com. You'll be hearing from Haley with opportunities to engage. And a huge thank you to all these folks in blue shirts that you see walking around. They have done a truly excellent job, and we're so, so thankful for them. Thank you to you for all coming out tonight, and have a great night.